Mm.
Good morning. I'm Susan Saylor, and this morning I'm interviewing Renee Watley, who is a Philadelphia-based pathwork helper who teaches extensively in the Pittsburgh Pathwork program. Thanks, Renee, for being here and doing this interview. I have some idea of how time and you are related, super busy. So let's start. How did you discover pathwork and how old were you? How long ago did you discover it?
How old was I? You threw that one in,
Oh,
Sue.
or, like I
It
am so
wasn't
new to Pathwork. I'm not quite 4 years old in
okay,
Pathwork,
so I'm
but
over 40 years old in Pathwork.
40.
Over
Okay.
40, I'm pretty sure. Uh, it's one of my favorite stories, actually, how I found Pathwork, because I found Pathwork through my helper, later mentor, later colleague, later friend, Carolyn Tylove. I was working for a program and we were developing group therapy. So I went to a group therapy conference and ran into Carolyn Tylove. And you know how you go to conferences and you like click with someone, maybe a group of someone, and you start going to lunch together and this together and, just talking things through. And so Carol and I clicked. And we left the conference, and I'm one of those people that when something is over with, is over with. So I made no attempt to maintain the connection. However, Carolyn and her infinite will type function tracked me down. I still to this day don't know how she did that. But she called me and literally, in the only way that she can, cussed me out for running away and not maintaining contact, and just really, was kind of shocking to me. And at that point in time, I was in the market for a therapist. Knew nothing about pathwork, knew nothing about her connection to pathwork. Uh, but there was a part of me that knew that someone who had her gumption and to come after me in the way that she did would be someone that would be honest, forthright, and could literally take me on. Because at that point in time, I was probably pretty well defended, not the soft, sweet person that I am now. So, and so that's how I began. I began seeing her as a therapist. She, introduced pathwork concepts. I remember my first pathwork workshop that she did, which was on the Divine Child Within. I remember distinctly the process that I did at that first workshop. And I ran across the flyer for it years ago, and it was in 1981. So that's when I sort of like named my beginning in the pathwork. And that was before transformation programs. She was running groups for mostly therapist types, which I joined. And the rest is history. When she announced she was starting a helpership training group, and that helpership training group was going to go to Brazil. That's when I signed up. And needed to quit my job literally because they wouldn't give me the time off. And so the trek to become a pathwork helper began there.
So you went to Brazil.
Yes, we went to Brazil. The entire class went to Brazil for 9 days of training with the Brazilian path workers. It was phenomenal. It was
Oh
truly
my
phenomenal.
goodness.
Yeah.
So what was it in Pathwork that drew you so strongly to Pathwork?
Well, in addition to Carolyn Tylove, because I have to name her as, the force, for me behind the path work. It was her transparency, her willingness to be vulnerable, her wisdom connected to the lecture. She was very, very connected to the content of the lectures. And what drew me to the path work was uh its unique combination of spirituality and psychological knowings. And I'm a psychologist. And so I needed that combination to ground me into some sense of spirituality that made sense to me. I have done my entire history about the Baptist church, the Unity church, this church, that, Science of Mind. I mean, I did all of those. And Pathway just brought it together for me. And I would say that in many ways it saved my life. It healed me from what the psychiatric community would call bipolar disorder. It's been and still is sort of like a very strong grounded foundation for the way I live my life and how I interact with others. Um, so
Oh,
that's my answer to that question.
that is really powerful, Renee. So pathwork is the ground of your life.
Mhm.
How would you say being involved with pathwork has changed your life?
How has it changed my life? It has softened me. I think that would be the first thing. It has softened me. It has assisted me in being more connected to others, allowing others in more deeply. It has given me a gift to give the world. I love teaching. I love workshops. I love doing workshops. It's an experience of spirit taking over for me,
Wow.
and the work that I do, which makes it hard to teach others, but that's part of the process. And it has centered me, and allowed me to both understand myself more deeply and understand others more deeply, but mostly understanding myself more deeply and having more care and compassion for myself and others. So,
Well, I certainly get that. That's what I'm working on too. Um, so what has been challenging for you about pathwork? Because, people will say pathwork is downright difficult.
I don't find it downright difficult intellectually, although many people do. And again, it may be a function of, like working it for 40 years. You sort of like get the themes that run through all the lectures and they become a level of similarity and so on and so forth. My difficulties are more around context. I have been until last year, maybe year before last, the only African American pathwork helper. And that has caused some difficulty in uh both poles and both having a sense of belonging. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, and being respected for my authenticity. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. What's true is I live in a different world than most of the other pathwork workers and helpers. And so that's been a source of difficulty that led me to remove myself from pathwork for a couple of years some time ago, because it became that difficult. Another area is the very, in my view, individualistic focus of the path work and the absence of, for the most part, a community social action focus. I mean, so uh and um my sense of myself in the world is communal. It's survival of a people at some level, and
Yeah.
so it need be communal. And that I don't get, from the path work. I'm fond of saying that, path work deifies personal responsibility law, but not the law of brotherhood. There's some way in which there is an imbalance there, in my view. Although there are path workers that have taken on very significant social justice issues. I'm not saying that, but that's pretty much outside of the path work.
Mhm.
So the individualistic focus is problematic for me, as well as I wouldn't say the absence of focus, but there's something in my view that's off about our focus on Christ. And not quite sure. I'm still working on exactly what it is, but there seems to be a need to speak in terms of Christ consciousness as being devoid or divorced from Jesus Christ, the person, and the message of that being. And so I'm working on that, trying to figure that piece out. But I have felt in some levels traumatized, attacked, in bringing that forward. So it's just another, piece that does a little, to my soul. And I've come to recognize that part of its importance to me is connected to race, and the sort of like alignment with that figure as one who has suffered, spoke truth to power, and suffered accordingly, which is sort of like the plight of my people. So those are the areas in which I find some issues problematic, blah, 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 blah. Uh, but for the most part, again, I say it saved my life as an individual, as a one being, and it's gotten me to this point in my life, 75. I feel good about how I am, how I feel, how I walk in the world, how I am with my family and my community. So, in that sense, it's been a godsend. And Carolyn Tylab was a godsend, and will always be very close to my heart.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you were sent such a gift in
Mhm.
meeting her. Well, we've talked about a number of things, but is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think it's important for people who might be interested in pathwork to know about?
I guess only that it's a process, that builds on itself, uh, that helps people access themselves, number one, and build a way of being in relationship with others that is fruitful and safe and caring. Um, I have no idea who I would be or how I would be if it had not found me, put it that way. If
Yeah.
it had not found me. It has not been easy in the sense of the things that I talked about earlier, race, individual perspective, the absence of acknowledgement at some level, the Christ focus that is in the lectures. But there seems to be a need to sort of like spiritually bypass them a little bit. Um, but it's it is transformative. I mean, I guess that's the bottom line. It is transformative, both in terms of building a positive relationship with yourself, number one, which many of us do not have. And then the capacity to expand out from that to build a positive relationship in family and close friends. And ultimately, and this is the place where I feel it currently lacks, and ultimately a positive relationship with the world, and how the world functions and taking an active role in that. Um, but yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
That's a lot, Renee. And I feel that sense of a need to be part of the world community. And I do that in a number of ways, but that's very important for me too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to thank you, Renee, for taking this time and giving of your wisdom and experiences to those who might be interested in pathwork, and now they know a little bit more about it.
Well, I hope it's helpful.
Oh, I genuinely think it is. So
Okay.
once again, thank you for your generosity.
And thank you for asking.
I'm so glad I did.
Okay.